Orphaned bear, cub refused to leave neonatal ward. Doctors finally learned his heart-wrenching reason. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The soft beeping of machines mixed with the gentle hum of the air conditioning system in Pinewood Memorial Hospital's neonatal intensive care unit. Dr. Olivia Winters checked her watch, 2:17 a.m., as she made her rounds. The night shift always felt longer, especially in this ward where tiny lives hung in delicate balance. Her eyes burned from fatigue, but she pushed forward, stopping at each incubator to check vitals and make notes on her tablet. She paused at the newest arrival, baby Emma Chen, born 8 weeks premature and fighting with every breath. The infant's chest rose and fell in shallow, irregular patterns, a wisp of dark hair peeking out from under the tiny knit cap donated by local volunteers. Dr. Winters adjusted the oxygen flow slightly, her practiced hands moving with gentle precision. "How's our little fighter doing tonight?" Nurse Marcus Webb whispered as he approached with a fresh IV bag. "Stable, but I'd like to see stronger lung function by morning," Dr. Winters replied, her voice low. "Her mother's still in recovery." Marcus nodded. "Sleeping, finally. Poor woman nearly died during the emergency C-section. That hiking accident, really." A strange sound cut through their hushed conversation, a soft whimpering that didn't belong to any of the babies. Dr. Winters froze, tilting her head to locate the source. "Did you hear that?" she asked, scanning the dimly lit room. Marcus nodded, setting down the IV bag. "Sounds like it came from the supply closet." The sound came again, a peculiar mix between a whine and a snuffle. Definitely not human. Dr. Winters moved cautiously toward the supply closet door, which stood slightly ajar. The whimpering grew louder. "Should I call security?" Marcus whispered, reaching for the phone. Dr. Winters held up her hand, signaling him to wait. Something about the sound tugged at her heart. It carried unmistakable distress, fear, and something else she couldn't quite place. With careful movements, she pushed the door open wider. 2 gleaming eyes reflected the soft blue light of the ward. Dr. Winters gasped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle her shock. Curled up on a pile of clean blankets was a tiny bear cub, no bigger than a small dog, its dark fur matted with mud and what looked like dried blood. It trembled visibly, eyes wide with fear, but it made no move to run or attack. "Oh my God," Marcus breathed, peering over her shoulder. "Is that what I think it is?" The cub let out another whimper, softer this time, as if pleading. Dr. Winters felt rooted to the spot, her medical training offering no protocol for this situation. Before she could decide what to do, the cub shakily rose to its feet and took a tentative step forward, still trembling. "Don't move," Dr. Winters whispered to Marcus. "No sudden movements." But instead of approaching them, the cub padded past, its small claws clicking softly on the linoleum floor. It moved with purpose, sniffing the air, until it reached baby Emma's incubator. There it sat, looking up at the clear plastic box containing the struggling infant, and let out a soft, mournful sound that raised goosebumps on Dr. Winters' arms. "This is impossible," Marcus whispered, reaching slowly for the emergency call button. "How did a wild animal get into a secured hospital ward?" Dr. Winters couldn't tear her eyes away from the scene. The tiny bear cub sitting vigilantly beneath the incubator of their most critical patient, as if standing guard. "I don't know, but look at it. It's not acting aggressive. It almost seems concerned," Marcus finished, equally transfixed. The cub placed one paw against the stand of the incubator, its eyes never leaving baby Emma. It sniffed the air again and made that same heartbreaking sound, somewhere between grief and recognition. Dr. Winters took a cautious step closer, medical curiosity overriding her initial fear. The cub didn't react to her approach, focused entirely on the baby. Up close, she could see the cub was injured. A gash on its side had clotted but looked painful and potentially infected. Its ribs showed through its fur, suggesting it hadn't eaten in days. "We need to call wildlife services," Marcus said, his voice firmer now. "Whatever's happening here, this is still a wild animal in a neonatal ward." Dr. Winters nodded, though something about the situation nagged at her. "Yes, but how did it get here? And why this specific baby?" As if in answer, the monitors attached to baby Emma suddenly changed their rhythm. Dr. Winters rushed forward, expecting the worst, but stopped short when she saw the readouts. Heart rate stabilizing, blood oxygen improving. The baby's vital signs, which had been concerning all night, were actually improving as the bear cub sat beside her. "That's not medically possible," Marcus whispered, checking and rechecking the monitors. "It's like she knows the cub is there." Outside the window, lightning flashed across the night sky, illuminating the thick forest that surrounded Pinewood Memorial. Rain began to pelt against the glass as the storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke. In that brief flash of light, Dr. Winters caught sight of something she hadn't noticed before: a small birthmark on baby Emma's arm, visible through the incubator's clear side. 3 small dots in a triangular pattern. Her eyes darted to the bear cub, where a similar pattern showed in the fur just above its right ear. "Marcus," she said slowly, "I think we're missing something here, something important." The cub settled down on the floor beneath Emma's incubator, curling into a protective ball, its eyes heavy with exhaustion, but refusing to close completely. It laid its head down with a sigh that sounded almost human in its weariness. Dr. Winters felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the hospital's air conditioning. There was a connection here she couldn't explain, something beyond medical science or rational explanation. As the storm raged outside and the night deepened, she knew one thing with inexplicable certainty: removing this cub from baby Emma's side would be a terrible mistake. What she didn't know was just how right that intuition would prove to be, or the extraordinary story that was about to unfold within the walls of Pinewood Memorial Hospital. Section 2. Dawn broke reluctantly over Pinewood Memorial, the storm having finally exhausted itself around 5 a.m. Dr. Winters had stayed long past the end of her shift, unable to leave the strange scene in the NICU. She sat in a chair near Emma's incubator, her white coat draped over her shoulders like a blanket, watching the bear cub that hadn't moved from its position all night. The hospital was beginning its morning routine: shift changes, breakfast carts squeaking down hallways, the distant hum of visitors arriving. Dr. Winters knew she couldn't keep this situation contained much longer. The day staff would arrive soon, and explaining a wild animal in the neonatal ward would be nearly impossible. "You need to go home and sleep," Marcus said, appearing with 2 cups of coffee. His scrubs were wrinkled, dark circles prominent under his eyes. He'd also stayed beyond his shift, both of them tacitly agreeing to protect the unusual visitor until they understood what was happening. "I can't leave yet." Dr. Winters accepted the coffee gratefully. "Look at Emma's vitals. Have you ever seen such improvement in a preemie overnight? She's breathing almost normally." Marcus glanced at the monitors and frowned. "It's medically unprecedented. But Olivia, we can't keep a wild animal in here. Dr. Patel will be doing rounds in 30 minutes, and then all hell will break loose." I know. She ran a hand through her tangled hair. "But there's something here we're not understanding. I've been going through Emma Chen's admission records. She gestured to her tablet. 2 days ago, she and her parents were hiking on the northern trail when they were caught in a sudden rainstorm. Mrs. Chen slipped down an embankment and went into premature labor. There's a note here from the EMTs about a wildlife incident occurring simultaneously, but no details. You think this cub is connected to that incident? Before Dr. Winters could answer, the cub's head suddenly lifted, ears perking up. It rose to its feet, staring at the door with intent focus. A moment later, they heard footsteps approaching, multiple sets. "That'll be Dr. Patel with the students," Marcus whispered urgently. "What do we do?" Dr. Winters made a split-second decision. "Get a clean incubator cover from the supply room. We'll hide the cub temporarily until I can—" The door swung open. Dr. Nadia Patel entered, followed by 3 eager medical students clutching notebooks. Behind them, looking pale and moving gingerly, was a petite Asian woman in a hospital gown and robe, supported by a tall man with worried eyes. The Chens, baby Emma's parents. "Dr. Winters, still here?" Dr. Patel raised an eyebrow. "I thought your shift ended at—" Her words died abruptly as she spotted the bear cub, which had retreated slightly under Emma's incubator but remained plainly visible. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved or spoke. Then Mrs. Chen's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening in shock. "The bear," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's the bear from the mountain." Her husband steadied her as she swayed slightly, his own face draining of color. "That's impossible, Lynn. That bear was— I would never forget those eyes," Mrs. Chen interrupted, taking a shaky step forward despite her husband's restraining hand. "It's her baby, the mother bear's baby." The cub, which had been cowering, suddenly perked up at the sound of Mrs. Chen's voice. It made a soft whimpering sound, and, to everyone's astonishment, cautiously crept toward her, sniffing the air. "Mrs. Chen, please don't move," Dr. Patel said sharply. "Marcus, call security immediately." "No." Both Dr. Winters and Mrs. Chen spoke simultaneously. Mrs. Chen, despite her weakened state, moved forward and painfully lowered herself to her knees. Her husband reached for her in alarm, but she waved him away. "Lynn, this is crazy," he hissed. "That's a wild animal." But Mrs. Chen was focused entirely on the cub, which had stopped a few feet from her, trembling visibly. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to it. "So sorry about your mother." The cub made that strange, mournful sound again, the one that had raised goosebumps on Dr. Winters' arms the night before. "Mrs. Chen," Dr. Winters said quietly, moving to kneel beside her. "What happened on that mountain?" "Lynn." Chen's eyes filled with tears. "We were hiking. The weather was perfect when we started, but you know how quickly storms form in these mountains. When the rain began, we tried to hurry back to our car, but the trail was already turning to mud." She swallowed hard. "I was 7 months pregnant but feeling strong. We came around a bend and suddenly, there she was, a mother bear with her cub. The medical students had pressed themselves against the wall, eyes wide with fascination and fear. Dr. Patel stood frozen, her hand on her phone but not yet dialing. "We froze," Mrs. Chen continued, her eyes never leaving the cub. The mother bear seemed equally surprised. For a moment we all just stared at each other. Then there was this awful crack. She closed her eyes at the memory. A tree, weakened by lightning or disease, toppled in the wind. David pulled me back, but the bear pushed her cub out of the way and took the full impact. Mr. Chen placed his hands on his wife's shoulders. The sound was— I'll never forget it. The tree crushed the mother bear. The cub was screaming. I didn't know bears could make sounds like that. Lynn was so upset, she slipped in the mud trying to move closer, fell down the embankment. That's when her labor started. The last thing I saw before David carried me away was the cub nudging its mother, trying to wake her up. Lin Chen's tears fell freely now. I kept telling the EMTs about the bears, but everyone was focused on stopping my labor. Nobody listened. The cub took another tentative step toward Mrs. Chen. Dr. Winters watched in amazement as the animal seemed to recognize her. "But how did it find you here?" Dr. Patel asked, her clinical skepticism battling with the undeniable scene playing out before her. "Scent, possibly," Dr. Winters suggested. "Bears have an incredible sense of smell, better than dogs. If the cub associated Mrs. Chen's scent with the traumatic event." "The blood," Marcus added. "Mrs. Chen started bleeding after her fall. The cub might have followed the scent trail." Dr. Winters's mind was racing. From the northern trail to this hospital's at least 6 miles, through forest and then town. For a cub this young to make that journey alone, after losing its mother. Mrs. Chen slowly extended her hand, palm up, toward the cub. Everyone in the room seemed to hold their breath. "Mrs. Chen, I strongly advise against," Dr. Patel began, but the cub moved forward and gently sniffed Lin's fingers. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, it pressed its forehead against her palm, making a soft sound that was almost a purr. "It remembers me," Lin whispered. A small alarm suddenly sounded from baby Emma's incubator. Dr. Winters rushed to check the monitors, expecting problems, but instead found all vitals improving even further. As if on cue, Emma opened her eyes for the first time since birth, blinking slowly under the soft lights. "That's not possible, Doctor," Patel whispered, moving to check the readings herself. "Her lungs shouldn't be functioning this well yet." Mr. Chen had moved to the incubator, staring in wonder at his daughter. "Look, Lin, she's awake." The cub immediately turned its attention back to the incubator, seemingly aware that something significant had happened. It moved back to its position beneath Emma's bed, looking up at the baby with what could only be described as concern. "I don't understand any of this," Dr. Patel said, shaking her head. "But we need to contact Wildlife Services. This can't continue, no matter how unusual the circumstances." "I've been monitoring them all night," Dr. Winters argued. "The cub is showing no signs of aggression, and Emma's condition is improving dramatically in its presence." "That's correlation, not causation," Dr. Patel countered. "And this is still a wild predator in a ward full of vulnerable infants." The medical students were furiously taking notes now, clearly sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented in medical literature. Lin Chen struggled to her feet with her husband's help. "Please," she said, her voice gaining strength. "This little one just lost its mother because she sacrificed herself, just as I nearly died bringing Emma into the world. There's a connection here I can't explain, but I feel it. Don't send it away yet." Dr. Patel looked torn. "I have an ethical and legal obligation." 24 hours, Dr. Winters interrupted. "Give me 24 hours to figure this out. We can move Emma to an isolation room with the cub, monitor them both. If there's any sign of danger, we'll contact Wildlife Services immediately." Dr. Patel's professional mask cracked slightly as she glanced from the cub to the improving vital signs on Emma's monitors. Against all medical logic, the premature infant was getting stronger by the hour. 12 hours, she said finally. "And I want constant supervision, a wildlife expert consulted, and hazard protocols in place." "Thank you," Lin Chen whispered. She looked down at the cub, which had settled again beside Emma's incubator, its eyes alert but calm. I think they're helping each other somehow." As the morning light strengthened through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in its beams. Dr. Winters felt a strange certainty that they were witnessing something profound, a connection between species that defied rational explanation but might just save 2 young lives. What she couldn't know was that the bear cub's arrival was only the beginning of a chain of events that would transform not only baby Emma's life, but the entire community surrounding Pinewood Memorial Hospital. Down in the hospital lobby, a group of hikers had just arrived, asking questions about a missing bear cub, and among them was a researcher whose life's work was about to intersect with the unfolding mystery in the neonatal ward. A researcher who had been studying the unusual bears of Pinewood Forest for the past decade, and who carried secrets that would shake the foundations of everything Dr. Winters thought she understood about the natural world. Section 3. The isolation room on the east wing of the 3rd floor had been hastily converted to accommodate both baby Emma and her unlikely guardian. Hospital maintenance had brought in a small portable fence to create a safe boundary around Emma's incubator, though the cub had shown no inclination to wander. Dr. Winters had arranged for a small bowl of water and some raw chicken from the cafeteria kitchen, which the cub had eaten ravenously before returning to its vigil. "Still can't believe Dr. Patel agreed to this," Marcus said, adjusting Emma's IV line while keeping a wary eye on the cub. "In 15 years of nursing, I've never seen anything like it." "She didn't have much choice after the Chens insisted," Dr. Winters replied, updating Emma's chart with the latest, remarkably improved vital signs. "And honestly, I think she's as scientifically curious as I am. This defies all medical explanation." A soft knock on the door drew their attention. Lin Chen entered, moving carefully but looking stronger than she had that morning. She was followed by her husband David, who carried a small duffel bag. "How is she?" Lin asked, moving straight to Emma's incubator. "Remarkably well," Dr. Winters answered honestly. "Her oxygen levels are approaching normal. Lung function has improved by nearly 30%. She's more alert than most preemies at this stage. It's extraordinary." Lin's eyes filled with tears as she gazed at her daughter. "And the cub?" "Ate well, no signs of aggression. The wound on its side needs treatment, but it won't let us close enough yet." The cub had perked up at Lin's entrance, watching her with intelligent eyes that seemed too knowing for a wild animal. It made a soft chirping sound, almost like a greeting. "I brought some things," David said, setting down the duffel bag. "Ranger Stevens from Forest Services gave us these when we told him about the situation." He pulled out a small blanket that smelled faintly of earth and pine, and a well-worn stuffed toy in the shape of a bear. "Apparently, they keep comfort items at the ranger station for orphaned wildlife." He said the familiar scents might help the cub feel safer. Dr. Winters raised an eyebrow. "You told Forest Services there's a bear cub in our hospital?" David shook his head. "Not exactly. We said we found an orphaned cub near where Lin fell. The ranger advised us on temporary care until they can send someone. He thinks we have it at our hotel room." "That buys us some time," Marcus said, checking his watch. But Dr. Patel was clear. "We have until 8 p.m., then Wildlife Services comes in." "There's something else," Lin said, her voice quiet but determined. "We've been talking to a man downstairs, a researcher named Dr. Gabriel Sullivan. He's been studying the bears in Pinewood Forest for years. He says there's something special about them, something different." Dr. Winters felt a prickle of curiosity. Different how? He wouldn't say specifically, not until he sees the cub, but he was very excited when we described the markings above its ear. Lin looked at her husband. "David, show them the photo." David pulled out his phone and brought up an image. It showed a magnificent adult black bear with unusual silver-tipped fur around its face, standing at the edge of a forest clearing. Just visible above its right ear was the same triangular pattern of dots that the cub possessed. "That's the mother," Lynn said softly. Dr. Sullivan has been tracking her for 3 years. He calls her Stella. Dr. Winters examined the photo carefully. "Stella," she repeated. "Latin for star. Because of the marking?" David nodded. "Apparently, it's a genetic trait unique to a small population of bears in these mountains. Dr. Sullivan has been studying them as part of some research project. He's desperate to see the cub. I'm not bringing a stranger in here without vetting him first," Dr. Winters said firmly. "Where is he now?" "Hospital cafeteria. He's been waiting all morning. He seems intense, but knowledgeable." Dr. Winters made a quick decision. "Marcus, stay with Emma and the cub. I'll go talk to this doctor, Sullivan." As she headed for the door, the cub suddenly let out a low whine. Everyone turned to look at it. The animal was staring at Emma's incubator with its head tilted, as if listening to something nobody else could hear. A moment later, the heart monitor beeped. Emma's heartbeat had accelerated slightly. "What's happening?" Lynn asked, alarmed. Dr. Winters moved quickly to check the baby. "Nothing concerning," she assured them after examining the readouts. "Her patterns are changing. It's actually a good sign of brain development." She looked thoughtfully at the cub. But how did it know before the monitors picked it up? The cub had settled again, but its eyes remained fixed on Emma's tiny form. For the 100th time since this strange situation began, Dr. Winters felt there was a communication happening that she couldn't begin to understand. "I'm going to find this researcher," she said, moving toward the door. "The more we understand about this cub, the better decisions we can make." The hospital cafeteria was half empty at mid-morning, the breakfast rush having ended and lunch service not yet begun. Dr. Winters spotted the stranger immediately, a man in his late 40s with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a short ponytail, wearing a flannel shirt and hiking boots that were caked with dried mud. He sat alone at a corner table, surrounded by papers and a battered laptop. "Dr. Sullivan?" she asked, approaching his table. He looked up sharply, intense blue eyes taking her measure. "You must be Dr. Winters. The Chens mentioned you." His voice carried the slight lilt of a Scandinavian accent. "They tell me you're a researcher studying the local bears, among other things." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit. I believe we have much to discuss about your unusual patient." Dr. Winters remained standing. "Before we discuss anything, I need to know exactly who you are and what your interest is in this situation." Sullivan closed his laptop. "Direct, I appreciate that." He reached into his pocket and extracted a business card, which he handed to her. "Dr. Gabriel Sullivan, Ph.D. Wildlife Behavioral Cognition, Nordholm Institute for Interspecies Communication, Interspecies Communication," Dr. Winters read aloud, skepticism evident in her voice. "The Nordholm Institute is based in Stockholm, though our research takes place globally," Sullivan explained. "We study elevated cognitive and communicative abilities in certain animal populations. The bears of Pinewood Forest are one such population. What makes them special?" Sullivan's eyes gleamed with barely contained excitement. "They display cognitive abilities far beyond typical ursine behavior, problem-solving skills, environmental adaptation, and most interestingly, unusual bonding patterns with other species." He leaned forward. "The bear the Chens described, Stella, is one of our primary study subjects. Her death is a scientific tragedy. And the cub? Potentially even more valuable to our research." Sullivan pulled a folder from his stack of papers. This particular genetic line shows the strongest cognitive markers we've documented. That triangular marking is associated with elevated neural activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex behavior and decision-making. Dr. Winters finally sat down, her medical curiosity piqued despite her reservations. "You're suggesting these bears are more intelligent than average?" "Not just more intelligent," Sullivan said, lowering his voice. "Potentially capable of the empathic connection across species. Our research suggests they can sense physiological and emotional states in other animals, including humans." Dr. Winters thought of the cub's behavior around baby Emma, its apparent concern, its ability to sense changes in her condition before the monitors registered them. "That sounds more like pseudoscience than research," she said, although her conviction was wavering. Sullivan smiled thinly. "I understand your skepticism. But consider this. What if certain animals have evolved sophisticated abilities that we've dismissed simply because they don't communicate in ways we recognize as language? What if empathy exists as a biological function that transcends species boundaries? Even if that were true, it doesn't explain why this cub sought out this specific baby. Doesn't it?" Sullivan pulled out another photo, this one showing the same bear, Stella, with her cub. Bears form powerful maternal bonds. The cub witnessed its mother's death while saving it from danger. Simultaneously, it witnessed Mrs. Chen's distress and the beginning of her premature labor. In that moment of shared trauma, "You're suggesting some kind of trauma bond between the cub and either Mrs. Chen or her baby?" Dr. Winters interrupted. "I'm suggesting something far more profound," Sullivan replied. "The blood trail explanation is plausible but incomplete. This cub navigated 6 miles of difficult terrain, somehow entered a secured facility, and found not just the general location of the Chens, but the specific infant connected to that traumatic event." He leaned forward intently. "Dr. Winters, what if the connection isn't just psychological, but bioenergetic?" Dr. Winters resisted the urge to dismiss him outright. While his theories sounded far-fetched, she couldn't deny the extraordinary behavior she'd witnessed. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Let me examine the cub. Study its interaction with the infant. Document this phenomenon while it's happening," Sullivan urged, his eyes alight with scientific fervor. "This could be groundbreaking research." Dr. Winters studied him carefully. There was something almost obsessive in his enthusiasm, but his credentials seemed legitimate, and they desperately needed someone with knowledge of wildlife behavior. "I'll need to verify your credentials first," she said, "and any observation would be strictly controlled, with the baby's health as the absolute priority." Sullivan nodded quickly. Of course. Here's my research ID and contact information for the Institute." He handed over several more documents. "Call them. They'll confirm everything." "I'll do that, Doctor," Winters said, rising from her seat. "Wait here." As she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that Sullivan wasn't telling her everything. His interest seemed too intense, too personal. Yet, if his research was legitimate, he might provide crucial insights into the cub's behavior. Insights that could help them determine the best course of action before the Wildlife Services deadline. Section 4. By early afternoon, a strange calm had settled over Emma's isolation room. Dr. Winters had verified Sullivan's credentials. He was indeed a respected researcher with the Nordholm Institute, with numerous published papers on animal cognition. Hospital administration had reluctantly granted him temporary observation privileges under strict supervision. Sullivan sat in a corner of the room, taking meticulous notes as he watched the cub and Emma. He'd brought specialized equipment, small sensors that measured minute changes in temperature, heart rate, and something he called bioelectrical field intensity. The Chens had given permission for passive monitoring of Emma, provided no sensors were attached directly to her. "Fascinating," Sullivan murmured, watching his tablet display. "The synchronization is unmistakable." Dr. Winters glanced at his screen. It showed two waveforms pulsing in near-perfect harmony. "What are we looking at?" "Biorhythmic patterns," Sullivan explained. "The cub's heartbeat has adjusted to match the infant's, but with a slight lead. It's anticipating changes in her condition before they happen." Lin Chen sat beside Emma's incubator, one hand resting on the clear plastic. The cub had grown comfortable with her presence and now lay closer to the incubator's base, occasionally making soft noises whenever Emma stirred. "It's like they're talking to each other," Lin whispered. Sullivan nodded eagerly. "In a sense, they are. Not with words, but through a much more primal form of communication, empathic resonance." He turned to Dr. Winters. "Have you noticed any changes in Emma's medical condition since the cub arrived?" "Significant improvements across the board," Dr. Winters admitted, "particularly in lung function and neurological responses. It's as if her development has accelerated." Sullivan made another note. "Stella, the mother bear, showed extraordinary healing abilities. We documented instances where injuries that should have taken weeks to heal resolved in days." "You think the cub is somehow helping Emma heal?" David Chen asked, his voice caught between hope and disbelief. "It's not outside the realm of possibility," Sullivan replied. "Many species have bioelectrical healing capabilities we're only beginning to understand. Electric eels, certain rays, they generate healing currents that accelerate cellular regeneration." Dr. Winters raised an eyebrow. "Bears aren't electric eels." "No, but this specific population has unique properties," Sullivan insisted. "The triangular marking is associated with unusual pineal gland development. In humans, the pineal gland produces melatonin, regulates circadian rhythms. In these bears, it appears to have evolved additional functions." The conversation was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Marcus entered, accompanied by a stern-looking woman in a park ranger uniform. "Dr. Winters, this is Ranger Abigail Morales from Wildlife Services," Marcus said, his expression apologetic. Dr. Patel asked her to assess the situation. Dr. Winters tensed. The deadline wasn't for several more hours, but it seemed the hospital administration was getting nervous. "Ranger Morales, we have permission to keep the cub until 8 p.m. tonight." The ranger nodded curtly. "I'm aware of the arrangement. I'm here to evaluate the cub's condition and prepare for safe transport later today." Her eyes narrowed as she spotted Sullivan. "Dr. Sullivan, I might have known you'd be involved." Sullivan rose from his chair, his demeanor suddenly guarded. "Ranger Morales, still following standard protocols without question, I see." There was clear tension between them. Dr. Winters looked from one to the other. "You two know each other?" "We've had professional disagreements," Morales said stiffly. "Dr. Sullivan believes certain wildlife should be treated as exceptional cases, outside normal conservation protocols." "Because they are exceptional," Sullivan countered. "Your department's refusal to acknowledge the unique cognitive abilities of this bear population is not just short-sighted, it's scientifically negligent." Morales ignored him, turning her attention to the cub. "It's malnourished, possibly dehydrated. The wound on its side needs treatment." She looked at Dr. Winters. "Has anyone touched it? Bears can carry numerous diseases transmissible to humans." "We've maintained appropriate distance, Doctor," Winters assured her. "It's been eating and drinking normally. The wound isn't infected. The ranger moved closer to the makeshift enclosure, studying the cub carefully. The animal watched her approach with evident wariness, moving closer to Emma's incubator. "This is exactly the problem," Morales said, shaking her head. "It's already habituated to humans. It'll need specialized rehabilitation if there's any hope of releasing it back to the wild." "That's assuming it should be released back to the wild," Sullivan interjected. "This specimen is—" "A wild animal, not a laboratory subject," Morales cut him off. She turned to the Chens. "I understand your emotional attachment given the circumstances, but this situation isn't sustainable or safe. We have excellent rehabilitation facilities where the cub will receive proper care." Lin Chen's face paled. "But what about Emma? They seem to be helping each other." Morales's expression softened slightly. "Mrs. Chen, I sympathize with your situation, but I have a duty to ensure this cub's welfare, and a hospital is not an appropriate environment for wildlife." "You're not taking it," Sullivan said firmly. "Not until we've completed our observations. This is a unique research opportunity." "Your research permit doesn't override wildlife protection laws," Morales countered. "And I've seen your observation methods before." The tension in the room was palpable. Dr. Winters stepped between them. "Let's all take a breath. Ranger Morales, we have an agreement with hospital administration until 8 p.m. I suggest we respect that time frame." Morales looked like she wanted to argue, but finally nodded. "Fine, I'll return at 8 p.m. with transport equipment. In the meantime, I need to examine the cub more closely, assess its health." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. Sullivan stiffened. "Is that a tranquilizer?" "Just a mild sedative," Morales replied. "Standard procedure for examining injured wildlife." "No sedatives, Doctor," Winters said firmly. "We don't know how that might affect its interaction with Emma, and her condition is still delicate." "Doctor," Winters, "with all due respect, I'm the wildlife expert here," Morales said. "This will just calm the cub enough for a proper examination." Before anyone could respond, the cub suddenly stood, hackles raised. It made a low growling sound, the first aggressive behavior it had shown since arriving. Its eyes were fixed on the device in Morales's hand. "It understands what that is," Sullivan said quietly. "These bears have encountered wildlife services before. They recognize the equipment." Morales scoffed. "That's ridiculous. It's just responding to a perceived threat." The cub backed up against Emma's incubator, its small body curved protectively around the base. The heart monitor attached to Emma began beeping more rapidly. "Her heart rate is increasing," Dr. Winters said, moving quickly to check the monitors. "Blood pressure rising, too." "The cub is agitating her," Morales insisted. "All the more reason we need to remove it." "No," Sullivan countered. "They're connected. The infant is responding to the cub's distress." As if to prove his point, the cub made another soft whining sound, and Emma's tiny hand moved inside the incubator, fingers splaying wide. "She's never done that before," Lynn whispered. "That's a deliberate movement." Dr. Winters checked the neurological readings. "Increased brain activity in the prefrontal cortex." She shot Sullivan a surprised look. "The same area you mentioned in the bears." Sullivan nodded, his eyes gleaming with vindication. "It's not just empathy, it's communication." The standoff continued for several tense moments. Finally, Morales put away the sedative device. "Fine. I'll observe without intervention for now, but this changes nothing about the 8 p.m. deadline." As Morales retreated to a corner of the room, Dr. Winters noticed Sullivan watching the ranger with open suspicion. There was clearly history between them. and it made her wonder what else she might not know about the researcher or his work with these bears. The cub gradually relaxed its defensive posture, settling back beside the incubator. Emma's vital signs stabilized once more, returning to their improved state. "I need to check on my other patients," Dr. Winters said. "Marcus, can you stay here? I'll be back in an hour." As she left the room, Sullivan followed her into the hallway. "Doctor?" "Winters, a word?" She turned, noting the urgency in his expression. "What is it?" "I don't trust Morales," he said quietly. "Her department has been trying to interfere with our research for years. They don't believe, or don't want to believe, what we've discovered about these bears." "Which is what exactly?" "You keep hinting at something extraordinary, but you haven't been specific." Sullivan glanced around to ensure they were alone. "The bears of Pinewood Forest aren't just unusually intelligent. We believe they're evolving, developing cognitive and empathic abilities that are approaching human levels." Dr. Winters stared at him. That's not possible. 20 years ago, we thought emotional intelligence was uniquely human. Then we discovered it in primates, elephants, dolphins. What if evolution didn't stop there? What if, in isolated populations under specific environmental conditions, other species are making similar leaps? Even if that were true, it would take thousands of generations. Sullivan shook his head. "Not necessarily. Not with the right catalyst." He leaned closer. "The area where these bears live, there's something unusual about it. Geomagnetic properties we don't fully understand. Mineral compositions that don't match surrounding regions. Something in that environment is accelerating evolutionary changes." Dr. Winters felt a chill run down her spine. Sullivan's claims sounded like science fiction, yet she couldn't deny the inexplicable behavior she'd witnessed from the cub. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "That cub isn't just seeking comfort or following instinct. It's consciously trying to help that infant. It understands, on some level, that they share a connection through trauma, and it's using abilities we don't fully comprehend to facilitate healing." "That's a massive leap, Dr. Sullivan." "Is it?" He pulled out his tablet and showed her a video. "This is Stella, the mother, from last year." The video showed the adult bear approaching a wounded deer fawn in a forest clearing. Instead of attacking the vulnerable animal, the bear gently nudged it, then lay down beside it, pressing its body against the fawn's injury. The timestamp showed the video continuing for hours, the bear remaining beside the fawn as darkness fell. "We found the fawn the next day, its wound partially healed," Sullivan said. "Tissue samples showed accelerated cellular regeneration that we couldn't explain through conventional biology." Dr. Winters handed back the tablet, her mind racing. "If what you're saying is true, then removing that cub from Emma could be potentially harmful to both of them," Sullivan finished. "The connection they formed isn't just emotional, it's physiological. Breaking it suddenly could cause trauma." Dr. Winters thought of Emma's dramatically improved condition since the cub's arrival. If Sullivan was right, would her condition deteriorate once the cub was removed? "I need to consult with Dr. Patel," she said finally. "This is beyond my authority alone." "Be careful who you trust with this information," Sullivan warned. "There are people who would go to great lengths to suppress evidence of accelerated evolution. It contradicts too many established theories, threatens too many academic reputations." "Are you suggesting Ranger Morales?" "I'm suggesting her department has actively interfered with our research," Sullivan interrupted. "Tracking devices mysteriously failing, research subjects disappearing, permits revoked without explanation." Before Dr. Winters could respond, her pager beeped. An emergency in the main NICU. I have to go. We'll continue this discussion later. As she hurried toward the emergency, Dr. Winters found herself torn between scientific skepticism and the evidence of her own observations. Sullivan's claims were extraordinary, perhaps too extraordinary to believe. Yet the connection between Emma and the cub was undeniable, defying conventional explanation. What she didn't know was that across town, other forces were already moving. People who had learned about the bear cub's presence in the hospital and who had their own reasons for wanting access to it. People who had been searching for the offspring of Stella for much longer than Sullivan had let on. And deep in the forest that surrounded Pinewood, something was stirring. Something that had felt the death of one of its own, and the strange connection forming between two young lives. Something that was drawing closer to the hospital with each passing hour. Section 5. The emergency in the NICU turned out to be a false alarm. A faulty monitor had triggered alerts for a baby who was actually doing fine. Still, it took Dr. Winters nearly an hour to check all the systems and ensure everything was truly stable. As she finished her final checks, Dr. Patel entered the ward, her face set in stern lines. "Dr. Winters, a moment, please." They stepped into the small office adjacent to the NICU. Dr. Patel closed the door firmly behind them. "I've just received concerning information about your guest researcher." She handed Dr. Winters a printout of a news article. "Dr. Sullivan was suspended from the Nordholm Institute 8 months ago, pending an ethics investigation." Dr. Winters scanned the article with growing alarm. The allegations included unauthorized experimental procedures on wildlife, falsification of research data, and violation of protected species protocols. "This can't be right," she said, though doubt was already creeping in. "I verified his credentials. The Institute confirmed his position." "He still holds his title, technically," Dr. Patel replied. "But he's been on forced leave while they investigate. He has no active research permits in this country." She sighed heavily. "Olivia, I've been patient with this unusual situation because I respect your judgment, and because the Chen baby has shown remarkable improvement. But having an unauthorized researcher conducting experiments in my hospital crosses a line." "He's not conducting experiments," Dr. Winters protested. "He's just observing. With specialized equipment that wasn't approved by our medical board." Dr. Patel's expression softened slightly. "I understand this situation is unprecedented. The connection between the cub and the infant is curious, but we can't compromise hospital protocols or patient safety." "What about Emma's improvement?" "If we remove the cub, we'll monitor her closely," Dr. Patel interrupted. "But we can't keep wild animals in a neonatal unit based on correlation that might be coincidence. Ranger Morales has confirmed she'll be here at 8 p.m. to collect the cub. I suggest you prepare the Chens for the transition." After Dr. Patel left, Dr. Winters sat heavily in the office chair, her mind racing. Sullivan had lied about his current status with the Institute, but did that invalidate his observations? The cub's behavior was extraordinary, its connection to Emma undeniable, and Emma's improvement was documented in objective medical data, not just subjective observation. Her cell phone vibrated with an incoming call from a number she didn't recognize. She answered cautiously. "Dr. Winters? This is Dr. Eleanor Nordholm." The woman's voice carried a distinctive Swedish accent. "I understand you've met my colleague, Gabriel Sullivan." Dr. Winters sat up straighter. "Dr. Nordholm? As in the founder of the Nordholm Institute? The same. I apologize for calling directly, but this situation requires discretion. I believe Gabriel has been sharing some of our research findings with you." "He has," Dr. Winters confirmed. Though I've just learned he's been suspended from your institute." There was a pause on the line. Gabriel's methods can be unorthodox, but his scientific observations are sound. The bear population he's studying is genuinely extraordinary. "So you support his claims about accelerated evolution, enhanced cognitive abilities?" "I would frame it more cautiously, Doctor," Nordholm replied. "We have documented unusual neurological development in this specific population. Their problem-solving abilities and interspecies behaviors exceed anything in current scientific literature. And the healing abilities. The empathic connection?" Another pause. "We have case studies suggesting the possibility. Nothing conclusive yet." Dr. Nordholm's voice became more urgent. "But that's precisely why this situation with the infant is so important. It could provide verifiable medical data in a controlled environment." "The cub is being removed tonight," Dr. Winters said. "Wildlife Services is coming at 8 p.m. "That would be unfortunate, Doctor," Nordholm said carefully, "both scientifically and potentially for the infant's health. Is there any way to delay the transfer? Even 48 hours of additional observation could be invaluable." Dr. Winters considered her options. Hospital administration had made their decision, but if she could provide new evidence, a compelling medical reason. "I need to go," she said suddenly. "Thank you for calling, Doctor. Nordholm, I'll do what I can." She ended the call and hurried back toward Emma's isolation room, her mind working furiously. If the connection between Emma and the cub was truly physiological rather than just psychological, there might be a way to prove it, to demonstrate that separating them could pose a medical risk to Emma. As she approached the room, she heard raised voices inside. She quickened her pace, pushing the door open to find Sullivan and Ranger Morales in a heated argument. "Absolutely not authorized to collect those samples," Morales was saying, her face flushed with anger. Sullivan stood protectively in front of the cub's enclosure, holding what looked like small tufts of fur in a collection vial. "This is non-invasive sampling. The cub wasn't harmed or even disturbed." "What's going on?" Dr. Winters demanded. Lin Chen looked up, her face tight with worry. Dr. Sullivan took some fur samples from the cub while Ranger Morales was out of the room. When she returned, "He has no permit for biological sampling," Morales cut in. "That's a clear violation of wildlife protection laws." "Shed fur isn't covered by those restrictions," Sullivan countered, "and this could provide crucial genetic information about the cub's lineage." Dr. Winters looked between them, then noticed Sullivan's equipment had been set up differently. Additional sensors were now pointed directly at Emma's incubator. "Dr. Sullivan, did you modify your monitoring setup?" she asked sharply. He had the grace to look slightly abashed. "I added some more sensitive bioelectric field sensors. The readings we were getting were so promising, without permission from the medical staff or the parents." Dr. Winters turned to the Chens. "Did either of you authorize additional monitoring equipment?" David Chen shook his head. "He said he was just adjusting what was already there. We didn't realize—" "This ends now, Doctor," Winters said firmly. "Dr. Sullivan, please pack up your equipment. Your observation period is over." Sullivan's face hardened. "You don't understand what's at stake here. This cub represents—" "A patient in my care is what's at stake," Dr. Winters interrupted, "and you violated hospital protocols." "I need those fur samples," Sullivan insisted, clutching the vial tighter. Morales stepped forward. "Those samples were collected illegally. Hand them over, or I'll be adding theft of federal wildlife resources to the list of violations." The tension in the room was palpable. The cub, sensing the conflict, had begun pacing in its small enclosure, occasionally glancing at Emma's incubator as if checking on her. "Fine," Sullivan said eventually, his voice cold. "Take the samples, but you're making a terrible mistake. Both of you." He turned to Dr. Winters. "When that cub leaves, watch what happens to your patient. The connection isn't one way. They're supporting each other now." He reluctantly handed the vial to Morales, then began packing his equipment with short, angry movements. "Ranger Morales, I'd like to speak with you in private," Dr. Winters said. "Marcus, could you please escort Dr. Sullivan to the hospital lobby when he's finished?" In the hallway outside, Dr. Winters faced Morales directly. "What can you tell me about Sullivan's research? The real story, not the public version." Morales looked surprised at the direct question. "What has he told you?" "That the bears in Pinewood Forest are exhibiting accelerated evolution, enhanced cognitive abilities, possibly healing capabilities." Morales sighed deeply. Dr. Sullivan was a respected researcher once. His early work on animal cognition was groundbreaking, but in recent years he's become obsessed with this particular bear population, making claims that go far beyond the evidence. "So, you don't believe there's anything unusual about these bears?" "I didn't say that," Morales replied carefully. "The Pinewood bears do show some unusual characteristics: problem-solving abilities, social structures, communication patterns that differ from standard black bear behavior. That's why we've designated the area as a special research zone." "And the healing abilities? The empathic connection?" Morales hesitated. "There have been incidents, anecdotal reports from hikers, a few documented cases of injured animals found near bears that seem to be recovering faster than expected. Nothing conclusive, but enough to make you skeptical rather than dismissive," Dr. Winters noted. "I'm a scientist first, a ranger second," Morales admitted. "I follow the evidence where it leads, but Sullivan wants to jump straight to extraordinary conclusions without the rigorous proof such claims require." She lowered her voice. "And his methods have become increasingly questionable. We found evidence of drugged wildlife in his research areas, unauthorized implants in some animals. That's why his permits were suspended." Dr. Winters processed this information. "The cub has shown remarkable behavior here, and Emma's improvement since its arrival is documented in our medical records." "I don't doubt what you've observed," Morales said, "but attributing it to supernatural healing powers is a stretch. The cub's presence might be providing some form of comfort or stress reduction that's helping the infant's natural healing processes. That would be remarkable enough without venturing into fringe science. What if I could show you empirical evidence of a physiological connection? Would that change your position on removing the cub tonight?" Morales studied her carefully. "What kind of evidence?" "Give me until 7 p.m. Let me run some specific tests monitoring both Emma and the cub simultaneously. If I can demonstrate a clear physiological link, changes in one directly affecting the other in measurable ways, would you consider a brief extension?" After a long moment, Morales nodded. "Show me clear evidence, and I'll consider it, but Sullivan stays out of the room, and I'll be observing all tests." "Agreed," Dr. Winters said, already mentally planning the protocol. "Let's start now." As they turned to re-enter the isolation room, neither of them noticed the janitor at the far end of the hall watching their interaction with unusual intensity. As soon as they disappeared through the door, he pulled out a phone and dialed quickly. "They're running tests," he said quietly. "Sullivan's been removed, but the doctor is pursuing the connection angle." He listened briefly. "Yes, still scheduled for 8 p.m. No, I don't think they suspect anything." Another pause. "Understood. I'll be in position." He pocketed the phone and pushed his cleaning cart casually down the hallway, passing Emma's room without a glance. But inside his pocket, his hand tightened around a small device, a signal jammer that would soon play a crucial role in the events to unfold. Outside the hospital, the afternoon sun was beginning to lower toward the surrounding mountains. And from those mountains, something continued its steady approach, drawn by instinct, by connection, by something older and more powerful than the human minds trying to understand what was happening within the hospital walls. Section 6. By 6:30 p.m., the isolation room had been transformed into an impromptu research lab. Dr. Winters had brought in additional monitoring equipment from the NICU, sensors designed to track the most minute changes in infant physiological responses. With Dr. Patel's reluctant permission, she had set up a parallel monitoring system for the cub, using veterinary equipment borrowed from the hospital's animal therapy program. "We'll start with baseline readings," Dr. Winters explained to the Chens and Ranger Morales, then introduce a series of controlled stimuli to one subject and watch for corresponding changes in the other. Marcus helped attach the final sensors to the display monitors. "Everything's ready. Which one do we start with?" "The infant," Dr. Winters decided. "It's easier to control the stimuli precisely. We'll use standard NICU neurological response tests, changes in light, sound, temperature." Lin Chen sat beside Emma's incubator, one hand resting on the clear plastic as it had been for most of the day. "Will this hurt her at all?" "Not at all, Doctor," Winters assured her. "These are standard developmental tests we perform routinely, just gentle stimuli to measure responsiveness." The cub had been watching the proceedings with alert interest, tracking the movement of each person in the room. It had grown visibly more restless as the afternoon progressed, occasionally pacing its small enclosure before returning to its position near Emma. "The cub seems agitated," Morales observed. "More active than earlier." "It's been confined for nearly 24 hours, Marcus pointed out. "That would make anyone restless." Dr. Winters nodded, though privately she wondered if there was more to it. The cub's behavior had subtly shifted over the past few hours, more alert, more focused, as if it were anticipating something. "Let's begin with the light response test," she said, pushing aside her concerns for now. She dimmed the room lights and prepared a small pen light used for pupillary response testing. "I'll direct a gentle beam toward Emma's eyes, and we'll monitor her pupillary contraction." She carefully shined the light toward Emma's face. The infant's pupils contracted normally, but what caught everyone's attention was the cub's simultaneous reaction. It blinked rapidly and turned its head away from the light, despite being outside the light's direct path. "That's unusual," Morales admitted, watching the monitors. "But it could be coincidence." "Let's try sound next," Dr. Winters said. She activated a small device that emitted a soft beeping tone near Emma's incubator. The infant's reading showed increased brain activity in the auditory processing region, and the cub's reading showed an almost identical pattern, with a delay of less than half a second. "That's not coincidence," David Chen said, watching the parallel waveforms on the monitors. "They're responding in the same way, at almost the same time." They continued through a series of tests, subtle temperature changes, gentle tactile stimulation with a soft brush against Emma's hand, even the scent of alcohol wipes commonly used in the NICU. In each case, the cub showed physiological responses mirroring Emma's, sometimes even anticipating them. "Now, let's reverse the process, Doctor," Winters suggested. "Stimuli to the cub, monitoring Emma's response." Morales looked skeptical but nodded. "What did you have in mind?" Nothing invasive, Dr. Winters assured her. Perhaps the scent of something bears would naturally encounter? Do you have anything in your gear? Morales reached into her pack and pulled out a small vial. Pine resin. We use it to bait tracking stations. She carefully opened the vial near the cub's enclosure. The response was immediate. The cub perked up, sniffing eagerly toward the scent. Within seconds, Emma's monitor showed increased activity in her olfactory processing center, despite being nowhere near the vial. "That's not possible," Morales whispered, checking the data readings again. Dr. Winters felt a chill run down her spine. Sullivan's claims suddenly seemed less far-fetched. "One more test," she said. "Let's try something emotional rather than just sensory." She turned to Lin Chen. "Would you be willing to hold the cub? Under Ranger Morales' supervision, of course." Lin looked surprised but nodded. "If it's safe, yes." "I'm not sure that's advisable," Morales began, but Dr. Winters cut her off. "The cub has shown no aggression. It's clearly bonded with Mrs. Chen already, and it would provide the strongest test of the emotional connection." After a moment's hesitation, Morales nodded. "Brief contact only, and I'll be right beside you." They carefully opened the enclosure. The cub watched with intelligent eyes as Lin slowly approached and knelt a few feet away, extending her hand. Without hesitation, the cub moved toward her, sniffing her fingers before pressing its head against her palm, just as it had done that morning. "That's it," Lin whispered. "Good little one." Slowly, she gathered the cub into her arms. It was surprisingly light, its small body tense at first, but gradually relaxing against her. Lin cradled it much as she would have held her daughter, one hand gently stroking its fur. The effect on Emma was immediate and dramatic. Her heart rate, which had been slightly elevated throughout the tests, suddenly stabilized. Her oxygen levels improved. The brain activity monitors showed a pattern that Dr. Winters recognized from her neurological training, the same pattern seen in infants when held by their mothers. "She feels it," Dr. Winters said softly. "She knows the cub is being comforted." Morales was staring at the monitors in disbelief. This goes against everything we understand about interspecies interaction. "Sometimes science advances by encountering the unexplainable," Dr. Winters replied. She turned to Morales. "Is this enough evidence to consider delaying the transfer, just for a few days, to document this phenomenon properly?" Before Morales could answer, the cub suddenly stiffened in Lin's arms. Its head lifted sharply, nose pointed toward the window. It made a sound none of them had heard before, a high-pitched call that was neither whimper nor growl. "What's happening?" David asked, moving protectively closer to his wife and the cub. Morales was watching the cub with newfound intensity. "That's a contact call. Cubs use it to locate their mothers in the wild." "But its mother is dead," Marcus said, confused. "Yes," Morales confirmed, moving toward the window and peering out at the darkening forest beyond the hospital grounds.